Blinking in the morning sun, blinking in the morning sun, shaking off the heavy one.
The reason I make this friends is these are albums which I want, ones that I think should be remastered on vinyl. These are artists I collect. People watch my videos, some people collect different artists to me, so this is why it's a thread. If you want to talk about records which you think should be remastered on vinyl, please feel free to join in. Let me know as well, because I'd be really interested to see what ones you guys are talking about. But
hey people, welcome back. Hope everyone's going to have a very nice weekend. Today I am going to respond to a thread that my very good friend Rockboy680 started last week about albums that you would very much like to see either pressed on vinyl for the very first time or repressed for various reasons. So I thought it was a very interesting topic, probably one that has been discussed here before, but I personally haven't done it. And James mentioned to me that the last time he tried to do a thread, no one responded, which is crazy to think he's got, you know, nearly 4,000 subscribers and no one responded to his thread. I like the topic. I felt bad about that, so I decided to come and do a thread response regarding albums that really desperately, well, you know, you hate to use the word desperate because, you know, are we really desperate for spending more money with music that we typically have in another format? But, you know, as collectors, as vinyl collectors, you know, we would very much like to see these either repressed or pressed to vinyl for the very first time. So I went through a lot of stuff. And there's a long list of things I didn't even think about for the very longest time that I would like to see put on vinyl. And I've cut it down to about, God only knows, I think I pulled about 50 things out. So I'm going to have to go pretty quick here. And I'm going to try not to repeat what he's done on his channel, because I agree with a lot of the things that he said, but I don't want to have to just repeat what he already has let you guys know that needs to be put back onto vinyl. He's put out a very good video to introduce this thread, so I'll put a link in the description to this one for you guys to go check that out. And he gives you lots of good examples, more into his taste, as you would expect, but also some things that I jotted down on a piece of paper that I wanted to kind of say, yes, I get that, and I would like that too. You know, the ones that stood out the most to me. I mean, he mentioned Fleetwood Mac. You know, that's been a hot topic lately with Fleetwood Mac. Got a lot of response to the video I did 2 weeks ago. If you haven't seen that, you know, you might be shocked at how many people have watched that. I know I have been. I did not expect that, so it's been crazy. But Fleetwood Mac, he mentioned Say You Will, which is a really good album, and I had made a mistake in my previous Fleetwood Mac video talking about Say You Will as not a good album. I was confused with my titles. I was thinking of Time, when they had Billy Burnett and Vito, whatever his name was, on two albums, Behind the Mask and Time, which I really don't like at all. Those are not good albums that should be just forgotten about. And but Say You Will was a good album. That was everybody, the original lineup of Fleetwood Mac, apart from Christy McVie, I believe. So he mentioned Say You Will. Totally agree with that. I don't think, I'm going by memory here, James, but I don't think he mentioned The Dance. This was the reunion concert that they filmed for a comeback special. I think it was aired on PBS here in America. And this was done in the late 90s, I think, mid to late 90s. And this was the original lineup back for the first time in, you know, over a decade. And got rid of those other two not so good members of Fleetwood Mac and got the original lineup back from 75 on through, you know, very recently anyway. And I would like to see The Dance put on a double vinyl, maybe a Record Store Days or something like that. You mentioned Eric Clapton. Totally agree with you on Sessions for Robert J, Reptile Back Home. You know, we're both very lucky and fortunate to have Reptile and Back Home on vinyl, so, you know, I think for other people, though, that would be highly desirable. And, of course, I agree with you on Sessions for Robert J. Couple things you mentioned, this Kate Bush album, The Red Shoes, totally agree with you. I do not have this in my collection. Would love to have this in my collection.
Yeah, I had to include them.
I think you showed a Russian copy of it, which I'm not that interested in, to be honest with you. But I would love to have a really good, nice repressing of the Red Shoes by Kate Bush, but even more so. And I don't think that you mentioned this. Maybe you did. Again, I'm going by memory. But this is my favorite Kate Bush album, and it's very, very difficult to get on vinyl. Very hard to obtain. Ariel, absolutely adore this album. Believe it or not, this was really my main introduction to buying Kate Bush records. I knew some singles from her. I think I had a compilation, The Whole Story, but I never really had purchased a full album from Kate Bush. And this was my first Kate Bush full album, and I fell in love with it. It's a personal favorite of mine, one of my favorite albums ever, especially favorite albums that I don't own on vinyl. And I just love this so much. So I know there is original copies out there, but they're really expensive and probably something I could not afford. So yeah, that's high on my list. You mentioned Robert Plant. I didn't pull him out. Fate of Nations, Dreamland, Mighty Rearranger. Totally agree with you. Very much needed to have those repressed. That would complete my Robert Plant collection, which would be great. I do have the 2 Jimmy Page collaboration albums that they did, so maybe not as important to me. And then you mentioned quite a few, well, I think 3 David Bowie releases. Earthling and what was the other one? Oh God, it's I can't think of it off the top of my head, but those have been reissued a couple times. At least once, I know, on music on vinyl. 1 colored pressing and 1 black vinyl. Experts from the outside finally thought of it. And I would say really more than any of those, Black Tie, White Noise would make my list of albums that need to be repressed on vinyl, because there's never been anything. And I'm not even sure that album will ever be repressed, because, as you said on your video, it was on some sort of one album he put on that label, and it was a once and done kind of thing, so I'm worried that perhaps we'll never see that. Anyway, this is going to be really long if I don't hurry up, so there's a long list here. I'm going to show you the records that I already have that I think would be great for either other people to be able to get affordably, or ones that really need a remastering or whatever reason. Let's start with this, and I didn't even sort them or anything, so they're going to be kind of random order. But I've recently been very much into this band, the Chameleons. I guess in the US they were temporarily known as the Chameleons UK, at least for this one album. This is Strange Times. There's a couple others in their catalog that I would love to see repressed. This is actually 2 LPs in this, and they're just flimsy, and it sounds good, but it could use a remastering. They remastered their first album. Gosh, I can't think of the name of that one either off the top of my head, but they remastered it, came out on a very nice repressed 2 LP, remastered at Abbey Road. Very nice, and this one, to my knowledge, has never been repressed, along with all their others after that. Well, in fact, that was their 3rd album. There's one in between that I don't have that I would love to see, so this is one I had. I can show you. This would be dearly loved by a lot of people. Actually, I'm just going to show you these together. You got 2 Peter Murphy albums here, Holy Smoke, what a cover, right? And Cascade, which I know Peter Murphy and Bauhaus fans would really dearly love to see repressed on vinyl, because particularly this one, Cascade, is very, very difficult to find. Holy Smoke is gettable, but you're still looking at probably $75 to $100 now. I had this sealed. I bought this sealed new 20 years ago, and that was long before I was even playing my records. I was just buying them because I loved them, and just collecting them for the artwork. So this is I've had for a very long time, and this one I did bite the bullet and buy one on Discogs, but I got a great deal on it, and it goes for a lot of money. So these 2 records by Peter Murphy, I would say, are probably high on Bauhaus Peter Murphy fans' lists.
Yeah, I'd include them.
Kind of the same vein, I pulled out 4 records from the band that I really like, Zymox, or Clan of Zymox, whatever you want to call them. They're mostly known for Clan of Zymox. This is their debut album. I think it's self-titled, isn't it? Yeah, Clan of Zymox. Yeah, I think it's self-titled. This is their best album. I mean, this is the one that people love the most, I suppose. And, well, I say best, but their first 3 or 4 albums are all really good. So, you know, this is one that could really dearly love a remastering. Again, it's gettable, but it's getting more and more expensive, and 4AD, I don't know, they put out a lot of Cocteau Twins reissues, they put a lot of Dead Can Dance reissues out, they put Red House Painters reissues out, but I don't know why they don't do anything with Clan of Zymox. Their second album, Medusa, kind of the same story there. Not going to get into it too much, but it's same 4AD. That was their 2 albums on 4AD, so at least those 2 could get released. And they signed to a major label, did Twist of Shadows, which is a phenomenal record. And this was on Polygram Records, and this is very difficult to find on vinyl nowadays. And I know a lot of people would love to see that one. That's when they changed their name to Zymox, which was temporary. And then the 4th album, which is maybe not as loved, but Phoenix, is getting harder to find as well. And this is actually a promo copy. An album I really like. It had more of a pop feel to it than their previous releases, which was much more dark and more gothic. But it's a very, very good album still. And I love songs like Dancing Barefoot and Written in the Stars and At the End of the Day. It's a really good album. So, Clan of Zymox, 4AD, and those 2 major label releases, they've got a long, long catalog. That probably deserves a whole collections video. And I will do that. 2 Cure records. And you think, well, wow, what's left from the Cure? They've done everything, and they've done 2, 3, 4 years in a row record store days. But there's 2 live albums that are really hard to obtain, and I'm very fortunate to have them. Their Show, a 2 LP pressed album that could probably use a remastering, and a nice record store day release, although this one sounds really good, and Paris. And, maybe if any people, record labels, are watching on this video, those would be very, very good record store day releases for 2019. So, here's ones that I pulled out. It's a series of 2 different bands that have both recently had reissue campaigns, and they were so bad that I'm saying forget those and just redo them and do them right, because particularly the second one, this one wasn't as bad, but they were still pretty bad. The Sundays for the past 3 years have put out record store day reissues of their 3 albums, including this most recent record store day with Reading, Writing, and Arithmetic. But they did Blind 2 years, 2017 and 2016, they did Static and Silence. Now these are original copies, and they sound so much better than the remastered, if you want. I don't think they're remastered at all. I think they're just digital copies pressed on vinyl. On the record store day stuff, with no notes, no protective sleeves, nothing. They're really, really cheaply done. And they almost should have just said, no thank you. I'm sure the band had absolutely no input on it, and it's purely a cash grab kind of thing. And it's very unfortunate, because their catalog deserves so much better. Yes, I bought them, because I'm a collector, but I won't play them. I'll play the originals. Anyway, this one probably even more so. This band got a very bad reissue series about a year and a half ago. That's Concrete Blonde. And they did their first 5 albums, I think, maybe 6. And I bought 2 of them. I bought Bloodletting, because I've always wanted a very nice copy of that. This is a good copy, but it's a little noisy. And I paid quite a lot for it, because it's on red vinyl. And this was an Australian tour edition of Bloodletting, and it still sounds better than the reissue campaign. And this is an original Mexican Moon from the UK, and still sounds better than the reissued ones that came out like a year or so ago. Just horrible. Save your money, don't buy them. They're just junk. And it's just tragedy. Now, last year, this band released maybe their most famous album, The Man Who, on a very nice repackaged, deluxe box set kind of thing. It's a little overkill. I wouldn't mind just having regular reissued vinyl if it's done right. But to my knowledge, they've never reissued the Invisible Band, Travis, the Invisible Band. Again, I'm very fortunate to have an original with the 7-inch that came with it. Love this album so much, but I love The Man Who as well. It's a beautiful box set. Can we get a box set or a reissue of the Invisible Band, Travis? I mean, come on. You know, that album did very, very well too. One of the very first videos I ever made in the VC was on one of my favorite pop artists, and that is Robin. This is Body Talk. This is an original, well, there's only one pressing, and I think it was limited to 300 or 400 copies. It was a very small run, and I know a lot of people are Robin fans, and a lot of people she's gained fans from since this came out. I think this could seriously use another pressing. Come on, guys. And I think she owns the record label that she puts her stuff out on, so I don't know why it's never been put back out. She probably can sell a lot of copies of it. This sounds amazing. I'd buy it just because I'm a collector and would support her, but I don't need another copy. I'm just saying for other people, it would be very welcome because this goes for $300 or $400. Now, Urban Outfitters, I think it was Urban Outfitters, and maybe it was, yeah, I think it was Urban Outfitters, put out Body Talk Part 1 because this was originally released as 3 EPs, and then she released the whole album, minus a few songs. But they released Body Talk Part 1, but never did anything with Part 2 or 3. So it's like, I mean, Part 2, actually Part 3 is my favorite. Part 1 is great, they're all great, but, you know, if you're going to do one, why not do all 3? I don't get it. So this is on a nice orange colored vinyl, and, you know, sold out, you know, never followed up and did anything beyond that. So that's just albums, so we better speed things up here. I'm going to just go as quick as I can through CDs because y'all know I love the Czars. This was John Grant's band when he was a local guy in Denver. This is one of, I think, 3 albums that they officially put out on Bella Union before they broke up. There was Goodbye, there was this one, and there was Before But Longer. This one's The Ugly People versus The Beautiful People, which is my personal favorite. And I'd love to see Bella Union put their full catalog out. I don't know why they don't. They did a compilation, The Best of the Czars, which is nice to have. I was very grateful they did it to introduce them to a lot of people who have now gotten to be fans of John Grant, to some very great music. And even though he says he doesn't particularly like it anymore, believe me, it's good. Yeah, that definitely needs it. One of my favorite bands is The Frames. Glenn Hansard's band, before he kind of went solo. Apparently they're still together, but I don't know if they're ever going to put anything out. This is my personal favorite, but there's many other titles from The Frames. This is Burn the Maps that could definitely stand to be put on vinyl. I don't think that's ever been put on vinyl. This artist I really fell in love with. I was a fan of his band, The Blessing. William Topley was on Lost Highway, Mercury Lost Highway, before that label went belly up. And this was Black River, his best solo album, and I really, really like it. And to my knowledge, none of his albums have ever been put on vinyl. So even a compilation of some sort, something from William Topley would be nice. I thought this CD was signed. Yeah, it is signed. I've met him a few times, and really great guy. And he was kind of a local favorite when I lived in Colorado. All right, here we go again with more. I'm going to be making this brief. I'm not going to rant about Lindsey Buckingham again, but this is Under the Skin, and this has never been put on vinyl. And I love this artist so much, and I'd love to see this album put on vinyl. I have everything else. However, Out of the Cradle probably deserves a vinyl repress more than anything because that's his masterpiece record.
Yeah, I'd include them.
Okay, here's an artist that a lot of people like, and these 2 albums have been cried for a long time to be put on vinyl. I don't know what they're waiting for, but this is Damien Rice. You've got 9 and O, his 2 really, really beautiful first 2 albums. What can you say? I mean, I think that says it all. Come on, we need those on vinyl bad. This one I'm going to go really quick because this is kind of an obscure artist called Voss. And they have several albums I really, really like. They have kind of a medieval, a little bit of a Dead Can Dance feel to it, but with more modern rhythms, I guess you could say. Here's Offerings. That first one was called Sunyata. This is In the Garden of Souls. We've got Feast of Silence, and I think that's it for, yeah. Then the one member, gosh, what is her name? Oh gosh, I'm gonna not be able to remember her name. She's got a couple solo albums out I like as well, but she's in another band too called Nayas. I'm not sure I'm saying that right. These, to my knowledge, have never been put out on vinyl, and you know, more of the same really. It's very difficult to tell the difference between these two artists. This one is a little bit more Indian influenced, I would say. Indian as in the country of India, not Native American. Really, really, really high quality stuff. Yeah, and then there's one other here. So we've got, I think this is just self-titled, yeah. So, yeah, I'm a big fan of hers. I'm a big fan of both of her bands. And let's hope somewhere down the road that we get something pressed on vinyl from whatever her name is. I'll try to put an insert in there, but it's a very difficult name to pronounce. I'd probably butcher it anyway. One of my favorite artists going back to the 80s is Simply Red. There's several albums that probably need a first-time pressing. I don't think that much of their catalog since the 80s have ever been put on vinyl, if anything. And these are two of my favorites. We've got Blue and we've got Home. I'm not sure which one I like more. This one is maybe a little bit more of an upbeat album. This one here is Blue. So, you know, maybe it's a little bit more of a somber type offering. But I love them both. And I love Simply Red. And I would love to see either of those put on vinyl. Mick Hucknall's got a tremendous voice, one of my favorite singers of all time. This one's a real mystery to me because you would guess, you know, a classic rock artist, you know, got tons, thousands, and millions of fans around the world. I don't know, maybe they just don't like this record or what it is, but Steely Dan, Two Against Nature, I don't understand why. You know, most of their other stuff is very accessible in any format, and, you know, Japanese CDs and vinyl pressings and you name it. Not difficult to find, but this particular album is got an original pressing, which I think is unofficial. And I've never seen one in the wild. I've seen them online. They go for ridiculous amounts of money. Two Against Nature is still a good album. It may be one of the weaker albums from Steely Dan, but it's still very good. And I'd love to get it on vinyl. And that would complete me on my Steely Dan vinyl collection. But I don't know. I don't know. Prince, the Black Album. What can you say? There's been multiple bootlegs through the years, more than I care to count. And they all suck. I would love Warner Brothers to get off their ass and put out an official, nice-sounding, great pressing of the Black Album from Prince. What? Come on. What are you waiting for? Really. I know it's not his greatest album ever, but it's still a pretty darn good listen. And this is an official CD. When they finally decided to get off their ass and do something at least with the CD, Warner Brothers. But I don't know. They listed this when Prince died. They listed this as a pre-order on Amazon for about 2 months. Then they took it down. I don't get it. I don't get it. This one I'll go very quick. I'd like to see some Kylie Minogue albums reissued. You know, there's several. I'm not even sure if I know the titles of all of these. But I think this one's just self-titled. Let's see. Yeah, I think so. I'm not 100% sure. And then we've got Body Language, her most popular album, at least in America. Now this one I do have from a UK import from Sainsbury in the UK on white vinyl, but very inaccessible here. We've got Body Language. I love this album here. Very, very cool album. That needs a repress really bad. This is X. Love this album as well. Lots of catchy, fun songs on that. And this one has, believe it or not, gotten ridiculously expensive. I have a copy. I bought it when it came out, Aphrodite. But, you know, fans that are new to her, fans that missed out on it, or just now getting into vinyl, I'm sure would love this. I don't know why. Her records are just once and done kind of thing. And her new album, Golden, is a lot of fun too.
Well, that's garbage.
All right, Paolo Nutini. His last album was pressed on vinyl, but his first two have never been. We've got These Streets, his debut album, and we've got Sunny Side Up, his follow-up. Didn't care for this one as much, but I still love it. And this one was just a remarkable debut album, really, from someone so young. And his third album, Caustic Love, is also great, and I do have that on vinyl. So I'd love to see those two Paolo Nutini albums out on vinyl. Oh, one of my old favorites of all time, Mr. Howard Jones. You know, all of his 80s stuff's out on vinyl for the most part. But there's 3 more modern albums that I'd love to see put on vinyl. We got People, which is a really good album. This is really good. If there was any of them, I'd really like this one, because this one really gives me the feels. This is nice. This is one of Howard Jones' best records, and I'm afraid a lot of people probably have never heard it, because they only stick to the 80s stuff, but this is really, really good. Revolution of the Heart. I like it as well. This is more of a dance album, more of a retro, very synth, maybe what you'd expect more from Howard Jones. A lot of fun. And then his most recent album, Engage. He came out with a couple very expensive deluxe editions of this, and no vinyl. I know vinyl is a little bit more expensive to manufacture. However, he was selling limited edition versions of this that had some sort of interactive audio-visual thing for several £100s. It's like, I think a lot of people would pay £50, 40, £50 to buy a deluxe vinyl version of this, Howard. I mean, I don't know. You got a lot of fans, very loyal fans, that would love to see some of your more modern work. And some of the older albums remastered and put onto vinyl. Here's an artist that never gets talked about, and I don't think I've ever mentioned, but I really like Mr. James Morrison, a UK singer. This is Undiscovered, his debut album. Great songs on this album. Very Dylan-esque, very singer-songwriter. Great voice. Where is he these days? I don't know anything about James Morrison. Can someone tell me in the comments what he's been doing lately? There's that one. We've got, I think this was the follow-up. Songs for Youth, Truths for Me. I don't know why. I've got two different versions of this. There must be a deluxe and a single version of this. That's all I have from James Morrison. And I don't know, has he got anything after that? He's not popular here, but he was pretty popular in the UK. I think both those albums were top 5 albums. Going back even again to the late 80s, early 90s, Collective Soul. I don't know why their record label doesn't put some of their stuff out on vinyl. Here's Hints, Allegations, and Things Left Unsaid, their debut. Self-titled, Collective Soul. We've got what is this one called? Discipline Breakdown. That's sealed. I'm going to open it and play it, I suppose. I have the CD. We've got Dosage, which is another really good album. And we've got Blender. And boy, I don't know. They put their most recent 3 things, I think, out on vinyl. But, I've messaged them on Facebook, and they kind of give us the standard answer. It's not up to us. We don't own them anymore. It's up to whatever label they were on. Atlantic Records, and I don't know why. Another band I really like is Japan. They did one of their albums in a deluxe reissue. Oh God, I'm so bad with titles. I'm really sorry, but Something Quiet. No, boy, it doesn't matter. But some of their early albums, Obscure Alternatives, would be really nice to have a nice remastered copy of. Adolescent Sex would be nice to have a nice remastered copy of, and Oil on Canvas. I have all these on vinyl, but they're original copies, and they're from the early 80s, and they need a little TLC, and I just love to see cleaner copies of them. This was a little bit more of a sentimental one here. I'm going to try to say it right. Asbjorn? Probably didn't say it right, but this is my favorite Danish singer, and I just love the guy. I think he's just a unique individual and quite a talent. This is Sunken Ships, his debut album. I do have his second album on vinyl, and I have some of his EPs on vinyl. And Sunken Ships has never been put on vinyl, so now he's on a major label. In Europe, maybe you could re-release his debut album on vinyl. 2 things from my friend Ross Goodall, and I think James may have mentioned this artist as well. Paul Weller. Paul Weller's albums are really tricky to find in general, but there's 3 that are just almost impossible. We've got Heliocentric, which I believe, Ross, you have a copy of, which I'm very jealous, and I keep waiting, hoping, and praying that they put out a vinyl reissue of that. We've got Studio 150, none of these are his finest work, don't get me wrong, but being a completist and a big fan, I'd sure like to have them. And then we've got Illumination, which would be really nice to own as well. This is the deluxe CD of that, but yeah, I'm not a huge fan of any of these records, but they're good. Either it's not among his best.
That's garbage.
And I would love to have, especially this one here, Heliocentric is a pretty darn good album. And then finally, I think this band could probably use a whole box set, some sort of major reissue campaign, because I don't think any of their records have been reissued and remastered, apart from maybe one, their most famous album. But this one I pulled out because it's rare to have it on cassette, and I have it, and it's just a good example of music that needs to be thought about for reissues. This is XTC Apple's Venus. This is volume 1. There's a volume 2 that I don't have on any format. This is a really good album, actually, and would love to have this on vinyl. I think there is original copies of it, but again, unaffordable. And, really you could say that about their whole catalog. That's getting harder and harder, at least in America, to find XTC stuff. And yeah, it's kind of annoying because I really, really like that band. And I have, I don't know, 4 or 5 of their studio albums. And I'd like to get all of them. But I've gone the cassette route because they all sound pretty good. And they're just a little bit more fun to collect than the CD. So I have a complete discography of XTC, apart from Apple's Venus 2, on cassette. So there you have it. That's my response video to Rockboy680's thread regarding albums that you would like to see on vinyl, repressed first time. Do it right though. Don't give us the Concrete Blonde, Sundays, and many other examples where they just don't put any thought or care into it. I just don't even bother, because you're raping the consumer. It gets old and tiring, and you're jumping on the vinyl bandwagon, and you got to do it right, or don't do it at all. So James, thank you. Great thread. I hope this encourages some other people. I think my friend Ross is going to make a video in the same topic this weekend as well. Get out there, make a video. Let me know what you would like to see repressed to vinyl or put on vinyl for the very first time. It's an interesting topic. So thanks, James, for the cool video idea. Hope everyone has a very good weekend. And until next time, take care and bye for now.